Okay, hey everyone, welcome and thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're going to preview some of our upcoming research here from MessageGears, and this is Data Matters, How Supercenters Use Modern Data Warehouses. My name is Will Devlin. I'm the VP of Marketing here at MessageGears, and again, we appreciate everyone for taking about a half hour today from your time, and hopefully make it worth it, especially here in busy December. So here's trying to set some expectations over the next, like I said, maybe 25 minutes or so. We'll really talk about what framed up the research in that the problem of data friction and why brands today feel the need to solve some of these problems around data friction, what the causes are, what the results are, but what's driving brands to consolidate data into a modern data warehouse. We'll cover who we surveyed and why, and then we'll go through some of the high-level findings about migration, about storage, about the enterprise needs, and of course around some of the results. I want to start by framing up, just giving some context on who MessageGears is. We did this research here. We are not a modern data warehouse. We're a customer marketing platform. We connect directly to your existing data like a modern data warehouse and help aid in removing the data friction. So we empower supersenders to create the best experiences possible for their customers quickly and easily. We do that by launching 3 products here. So we have 3 products to help brands accomplish their goals. And again, all of this puts and keeps the customer data at the center and keeps that as your customer, your database of record. So we don't want to be the hub of all your information. You don't have to sync and store data with us. We keep your data where it lives, and we work off of that. Our 3 products are Segment, which is an advanced segmentation and audience exporting tool, Message, which is a cross-channel orchestration and messaging tool, and Engage, which is a real-time contextual data enablement tool. And you'll hear me use the term supersenders quite a bit today, and we do that here at MessageGears because that's who we work with, and that's also who we spoke to for this report. So we define supersenders as large consumer-facing companies. They typically are sending 10 million. In a lot of cases, they're sending well over 10 million, hundreds of millions of messages per month, and that spans marketing and transactional. That spans email, mobile, push, website, all those channels. And we also define supersenders as having sophisticated personalization needs. So if you see a little bit of yourself in any of these, if this sounds like you're our definition of a supersender. So it's just an easier way to kind of encapsulate the audience here. Our upcoming research is going to examine a Q4 survey that we wrapped up about a month ago, where we examined marketers' experiences with modern data warehouses. We looked at the challenges and the benefits that they've encountered from their investment in a consolidation and access to their customer data through this MDW, if you will. So we spoke with over 100 marketing executives at supersenders, with our research partners at Servata for this report, and everybody that signed up for this, so everybody that's on the phone here, as well as anybody else that signed up, will be sent a copy of this. We'll have it launched in January. So this is an early preview of some of the data from this. For enterprise marketers, the dream when it comes to cross-channel marketing is really to be able to access easily and utilize easily the data that they have to deliver personalized campaigns to their individual customers. But what's been clear for some time is that for a lot of supersenders, it's a dream that's rarely realized. Data is hard to get out of various sources, and it's nearly impossible then to get to the various tools that you need to build out those targeted campaigns. So something that large companies deal with, and a lot of you probably deal with on a daily basis, is data friction. And data friction is prohibiting many of us from doing the work that we want to do. It takes some of the fun out of our jobs, and it really reduces the impact of our messaging to our customers. Data friction is especially prevalent in supersenders. Consumers are expecting super senders to get it right. You're a known name. The expectations have never been higher, and it's also hardest for super senders to get it right. There's so much data, there's so many moving parts, there's so many opportunities to mess something up or to have something go wrong. Marketers are a lot like this person on a life raft surrounded by ocean, but surrounded by water but dying of thirst. Super senders, they have so much data, but generally can't use 95% of it. They can't find a way to make it useful to them, so they're drowning in it essentially, and can't use it to their benefit. And this can make a lot of marketers feel like they're doing a bad job, but in actuality, you're doing the best with what you have. So one of the biggest priorities for enterprise organizations today is to get rid of data friction and get a better, more complete view of their customer, not just this channel by channel snippet. And so many organizations are starting with where and how their customer data is managed. Modern cloud data infrastructure from Redshift, from Snowflake, BigQuery, and some others, they allow visibility, scale, and efficiency that older legacy systems just cannot match. And this wave is really helping a lot of modern organizations consolidate their data and be able to have a complete view of their customers, to be able to tell what's going on across the organization, across all touch points, not try to piecemeal all these individual things together one by one. Think of it as, we have a couple metaphors I'll throw at you here, but like cheese is really good by itself. Bread is very good. I love bread. Tomatoes are good, but boy, you put them together, you put those disparate things together, they're very good together. They're delicious. Or you could think of it another way, separately, 5 young, fairly talented, good-looking singers on their own are okay. They kind of peak on their own at a certain level that's fairly low, but you put them together, international sensation. The Backstreet Boys, they're still going somehow, but at one point, this group here was the hottest act in the world. Individually, I doubt they would have ever gotten to that point. But essentially by themselves, they don't work. Together, it works well, and that's exactly from a modern data warehouse perspective why a lot of companies are consolidating data. This is a huge trend, and it's a very recent trend as well. Gartner has said that by 2022, so just a couple years from now, 75% of all databases will live in a private cloud. Our partners at Snowflake are growing at 240% a year, something ridiculous like that. So a lot of organizations are realizing, look, we need to do this now. We need to modernize. It's the only way that we're going to be able to get ahead in today's world. That held up in the research that we did as well. So 70% of those that we had surveyed are relatively new to this whole thing. They've only been using modern data warehouse for less than 2 years. There's only 7% that had been on one for more than 5 years, and some of those, like Snowflake, didn't exist 5 years ago. And you may ask yourself, well, why now? Well, the world's changing. We think of all these things that we depend on every day. Modern cloud computing has come along and really changed the world and has changed the way we all as consumers interact with the world and the expectations that come with that. We are trained now as consumers to be a very on-demand and very instantaneous, instant reaction type of society, right? So I can pull out my phone and have a car brought to me right away. I can pay with my watch at the store. I don't need any money on me. I can watch a TV show or any movie I want on demand. I can order something online and have it delivered to me within hours. I mean, we're trained as consumers, and of course, modern cloud computing has really enabled all of that. But it really raises the stakes for everybody, with us just being used to this fast-paced world. So one of the biggest questions we've heard from marketers as they start this journey about possibly partnering with a modern data warehouse, and how challenging that move would be. So, if your data is scattered all over the place, you might think, oh man, our data is a mess. This is going to be, it's impossible to work with in its current state. This is going to be a massive pain in the butt to move everything into one storage center. But what we found, surprisingly, and it's good news, that marketers really have not found that transition to take an unusually long or amount of time or be especially disruptive. So 65% said it took less than a year for them to be fully operational on a modern data warehouse. A solid one-third experienced zero negative impacts throughout that move, which is great news. In the full report, we'll dig a little bit deeper into different cohorts, like how database size impacts this overall. But these numbers really show the transition to be a reasonable one, much more reasonable than you would expect, for sure, for the vast majority of those that we surveyed. 41% of those that moved their customer data, they moved it from a CRM to a modern data warehouse. Now, the modern data warehouse is a consolidation of a lot of different data sources, and we talk to marketing executives, and so it makes sense that, look, the data that marketers cared about their customers was living in a CRM system, and now that's moving over to an MDW along with other sources of data being consolidated there as well. So now that central hub is tying the data that used to be in the CRM as well as data that is available from other sources, tying that all together again to enable that 360 view of the customer. Now, that consolidation piece is no surprise the most challenging aspect. So formatting the internal customer data from those various sources was the highest response in terms of the most challenging thing of consolidation, with 35%. Now, it also may go without saying that the biggest companies with the most customer data have bigger challenges and needs than their counterparts on the lower end of the database size scale. And it makes sense that the more data you have to organize and move around, the more difficult that task is going to get. And the more of an impact getting that done is going to end up having on your ability to personalize messaging. Now, 58% of marketers said that they store more than 75% of their data in a modern data warehouse. So with so many companies storing so much data in a modern warehouse, once they get up and running, it's essential that the largest companies are able to meet their outsized needs. We split this a little bit and found 33% of marketers at companies with $1 billion in annual revenue cited this move as a significant reduction in time spent processing and accessing data as the biggest benefit to having the modern data warehouse. Just 14% of enterprise marketers at smaller companies said that. And at 44% of the larger companies said that having resources available to consolidate your data was the biggest transition challenge they encountered versus just 20% of the rest. So you can quickly see the deep need for time and resources that scales up as your company and your marketing team grow. Now, the move to a modern data warehouse has really been transformational for a lot of marketing teams that have tried for years to run personalized campaigns. They're confident would net great results with their customers, but they kept running into roadblock after roadblock. So that's probably why 95% of those that we surveyed said modern data warehouse has improved their overall messaging engagement. 88% said that it's beneficial for their customers. In addition, more than half, 52%, described that their the customer benefit is significant. Those are overwhelming numbers, and they show that marketers quickly see how much immediate data access can help them do their jobs and serve their customers better. Some specifics on the benefits that are realized by marketers: more flexibility in how we're able to use the data, greater security for the data we possess. I know that's important to a lot of people, not just in financial services and healthcare these days, but really everybody is concerned about data privacy. Again, as we collect more data and as breaches become more prevalent and turn into PR nightmares, if you will. Providing a 360-degree view of the customer is obviously one of the main priorities, and you're seeing that as a big benefit that people are seeing. Again, significant reduction in time spent accessing and processing, and an improved audience segmentation and personalization. So accessing that data, being able to see everything in one place, is really helping businesses to move a lot faster. Now, this is great news, but the data consolidation piece doesn't solve all of the data friction issues. So I'm going to wrap wrap things up the last 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, so kind of explaining that. Siloed data is a big problem, and it is a big cause for data friction, and that ultimately trickles down to the consumer. We did another study earlier this year, with using Servata again, where we surveyed super senders about data silos and the impact on personalization, and 100% of those that thought personalization was difficult also said that their marketing team and their technology was siloed. 100%. We can't get 100% of people to agree on anything. But if their marketing tools were siloed, if they were looking at things in a very siloed way, that actually drove the way they structured their teams, which ended up siloing their teams out based on the technology that they were using. And 100% of those who had that siloed structure found that personalization was difficult. I'll give you another look at these young fellas. This was not taken last week. I'll come back to this. This is an old picture. They were hot on the scene 20 years ago. Their songs are considered classics by people, like in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. A lot has taken place since the Backstreet Boys were big. And one of the main reasons that, we're looking at a big problem, 100% of people saying personalization is difficult because their marketing resources are siloed, is because yes, you are seeing this big transition to modernizing the data piece, but then a lot of the tools that work with that data are still 20 years in the past, right? They're still, when the Backstreet Boys were popular, that's when those tools came on the scene. And so the problems that they solve for and the way they work are for a world that was built for 20 years ago, not this modern way of doing things. So think about all this work that's being put into modernizing the data infrastructure and consolidating on the data warehouse side. You're still having to then, with popular tools out there, the marketing clouds and ESPs, you're still having to then take bits of that data, copy it, and ship it up to an ESP or a marketing cloud, store it in there, and then you can do your marketing. And that is just incredibly inefficient. We did some research with the relevancy group just earlier this quarter, and it was all around data friction. And it was all around, look, we know that marketers are consolidating into data warehouses, but they're still doing these inefficient processes. And we found, look, super senders typically send, again, 10 million records to their ESP. They're also sending more than 10 million messages a month. It's those syncs, those data syncs, they take over 4 hours on average for super senders to send to their ESP, and that's just on average. They also break all the time. They break multiple times a week, which is just a massive cost. It ends up we end up having to staff IT resources to maintain those syncs and make sure that everything's going well. And it's ending up costing businesses, in some cases, millions, literally millions a year just to do this, because the tools that are out there are not caught up. They're not as modern. They're not working as efficiently as possible with that modern data infrastructure. It also takes a long time to migrate to these platforms, we found in this research. So it takes the better part of a year, mainly because you have to take the data from one place and figure out how to map it to the other. So this whole process, you've modernized the left half over here with consolidating to a data warehouse, but you're still doing everything else the way it was done 20 years ago, and that's inefficient, and that's costly, and that's limiting, and it's really the wrong way to do it. And kind of wrapping up the Backstreet Boys example, it would be like Howie from the Backstreet Boys going off on his own and doing a solo career. Nobody asked for it. Nobody wants it. It doesn't really work that well, Howie. You really just get back with the group, and that's where things make sense. So the other piece to solving data friction, and this is somewhat of a shameless plug here, but the other piece of it is not just consolidating the data warehouse, which we found in the research, but finding tools that work with that data and keep it as your center of excellence. So I mentioned earlier, MessageGears is built to work with that new data investment that you're making, or that brands have already made, or that are in the process of making. We sit right on top of that data where it already lives. We don't require it to be moved around. There are other tools in other sectors that work that way. From a marketing messaging standpoint, customer marketing platform, MessageGears is the only one that sits right on top of that infrastructure. But keeping that infrastructure as the central hub of information and attaching directly to it is really how you can maximize the investment. So all of those points of data friction we just talked about, enterprise organizations have to deal with. They're all eliminated. And because that's been removed, you can start delivering and exceeding customer expectations. The relevancy group also asked marketers what they would do if they didn't have to deal with those inefficiencies, and they said kind of what I think most of you said you would do: improve personalization, improve segmentation, and be more strategic, focusing on being the best marketer that you can be. So again, we're MessageGears. We're a modern customer data marketing platform that works with your data. So just to kind of recap on the consolidation piece, on the database warehouse. Companies are modernizing and consolidating with the goal in mind of eliminating data friction. Companies are storing a ton of data in a modern data warehouse, and the good news is that it's not as painful as some would think. So I think for a lot of people, this fear of, look, it's going to be a really painful process, and that's why we keep kicking the can down the road. According to the research we did, it's not taking that long, and that's great news for marketers. And another great news is that the expected benefits are actually the benefits. They generally like the results once they're set up. They're able to get that more complete view of the customer, feel like they know them a little bit better, and have a better idea of what's going on. And of course, the enterprise brands have unique needs and unique challenges, and consolidating is really helping them greatly reduce data friction. So once again, we're going to send this research will all be available in greater detail. You'll get to dive in and explore it a little bit, how supersenders use modern data warehouses. We'll send a copy of it in the new year, right after the break, to everybody here. We appreciate you for taking your time here in December for the last webinar of the decade from MessageGears. If you have any questions about the data or anything in general, you can reach out to us at marketing@messagegears.com. And again, I appreciate everyone for taking the time. My name is Will Devlin. You can find me. I'm at WDevlin on Twitter. You can email me at wd@messagegears.com. I hope everyone has a great holiday break, and appreciate you showing up. Thank you.